Back once again. This is Issues of the Day. I'm now talking about the weekend intelligence brief, which I'm combining. The fortnight in review is May 16th to 17th and May 24th to 25th. That is last weekend and the weekend before. The weekend intelligence brief. See, I have a number of publications out and I always review them. I'm reviewing the last 2 weekends because I always have some business weekend intelligence for those who read my newsletter. So now I'm coming out visually so that others can pick up an interest and also partake, to follow. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want, at Frederick Wakuliaka 4561. Like this video and also subscribe to at the moment I'm on LinkedIn, my newsletter. My newsletter is growing. It will expand to also other platforms. That's my target. I'll get there. The Rome was not built in one day. The steps and phases one has to go through. So I'm welcoming you. Issues of the Day Weekend Intelligence Brief. This is a combined edition of the podcast, as I've told you already, covering the intelligence picture from 2 consecutive weekends, Saturday and Sunday, the 16th and 17th of May 2026, and the 24th and 25th of May 2026. So I'm combining these 2 editions because they tell a single connected story. When you hold the 2 fortnights side by side, a pattern becomes visible that neither weekend alone makes fully clear. The first weekend showed you what happens when attackers find infrastructure that has never been secured properly. The second weekend shows you what happens when they reach the software tools that hold your organization together at the coding level. The through line between both weekends is this: the organizations caught in these incidents were not unlucky. They were predictable targets, and the actions required to reduce your exposure are not complicated. They are simply not being done. So this publication is the companion to the AI Breach Report, which I publish every Wednesday and Friday on LinkedIn. If you are not yet subscribed, search for Frederick Cybersecurity on LinkedIn and subscribe before you finish listening. Or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Frederick Wakuliaka 4561. So let us begin with the first weekend. Part 1, the weekend of May 16th, 17th, 2026. The week ending the 16th of May 2026 produced a threat landscape defined by 2 simultaneous failures. The first was the failure of organizations to apply known patches to known vulnerabilities before attackers arrived. The second was the failure of organizations making ransomware payments to understand that paying does not end the incident, it resets it. Both failures are entirely preventable. Neither is a technology problem. Both are governance and decision-making problems. I'll take you through the stories in order of operational significance. The first one was Cisco SD-WAN CVSS 10.0 actively exploited on the CISA Kiev list. The most urgent story of that week was a vulnerability in Cisco's SD-WAN manager software that received a CVSS score of 10.0. That is the maximum possible severity rating. It means an unauthenticated attacker with no credentials and no prior access to your environment can take complete administrative control of the device. Cisco published the patch. The United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, added it to the known exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, which is the government's formal declaration that this vulnerability is being actively used against organizations in real attacks. CISA's listing carries a remediation deadline. That deadline was the 17th of May, the Saturday of that weekend. SD-WAN is the network infrastructure that connects your office locations, your remote workers, your cloud environments, and your data to each other. It is not a peripheral system. It is the circulatory system of your organization's connectivity. A vulnerability at this level in this component with this exploitation status means an attacker can sit at the center of everything your organization communicates. If your organization uses Cisco SD-WAN and had not applied this patch by that Saturday, you are operating with a non-exploited maximum severity hole in the infrastructure that everything else in your business depends on. The action is simple. Confirm with your IT team or managed service provider that Cisco SD-WAN Manager has been patched and that the patch has been verified, not just scheduled. Story 2. Story 2, Microsoft Exchange Server. Email spoofing actively exploited. The second story concerned Microsoft Exchange Server, the email platform used by hundreds of thousands of organizations worldwide, including the majority of medium enterprises in the United Kingdom and across Europe. A cross-site scripting vulnerability in Exchange Server was confirmed as actively exploited during that week. The attack mechanism is crafted email An attacker sends a specially constructed message to a mailbox on a vulnerable Exchange server. When a user opens or previews that message, the attacker's script executes in the context of the Exchange interface. What does that mean? In practice, it means the attacker can steal session tokens, the credentials your browser holds to prove you're already authenticated. It means they can impersonate legitimate users within your email environment. It means they can redirect users to malicious content without triggering the kind of visible phishing indicators that security awareness training teaches people to spot. The reason this story matters for medium enterprises specifically is that Exchange server patching is frequently deferred. Every IT administrator knows that Exchange patches carry risk. Patches occasionally break mail flow. They require planning, testing, and downtime, and so organizations delay them. Weeks become months, months become quarters. Attackers know this delay pattern precisely. It is part of how they select targets. The action is to confirm your Exchange server patch status with your IT team or provider and escalate this as a priority if it has not been addressed. Excuse me. That was story 2. We go to story 3 of that weekend edition of the Issues of the Day, Weekend Intelligence Brief. Story 3, West Pharmaceutical Service says employees watched machines being wiped. West Pharmaceutical Services confirmed a ransomware attack during that week in which employees in the factory floor watched their machines being wiped in front of them. Not encrypted, wiped, rendered completely inoperable, without any pathway to recovery from the local device. West Pharmaceutical Services is a global manufacturer of drug delivery systems. It supplies pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and healthcare infrastructure worldwide. The operational disruption from an attack of this nature does not stay inside the company. It propagates through every supply chain relationship the company has. I want to address the point about watching the machines being wiped directly. This is not an incidental detail. This is a deliberate attacker choice. Wiping machines in plain sight of employees is a psychological operation. It is designed to create panic, to accelerate the decision to pay, and to signal to the organization's leadership that the attacker has total control. It is the ransomware equivalent of a demonstration of force. For medium enterprise leaders, the lesson from West Pharmaceutical is not about their sector or their size. It is about backup architecture. The organizations that survived ransomware deployments of this type without paying are the ones whose backup systems were genuinely isolated from their primary environment, not connected through the same network, not accessible through the same credentials, not reachable by the same process that wiped the primary machines. If your backups are online and reachable from your primary network, they are not backups. They are additional data for attackers to destroy. The action that I wanted people to take that week, even you can take it now. It's never too late to do these things, but it is late if you never do it. It is late anyway if you have not done it, but if you have not done it, you should do it now. So the action you need to do is to verify the isolation architecture of your backup systems with your IT team or provider. Ask specifically whether your backups can be reached from your primary environment using your normal credentials. If the answer is yes, your backup strategy needs to be redesigned. Story 4, Canvas Instructure. Canvas Instructure ransom payment confirmed. Canvas, the learning management platform operated by Instructure, confirmed during that week that it had paid the ransom demanded following its breach involving 275 million student records. This story requires careful analysis because it illustrates a decision pattern that medium enterprise leaders face, and the conventional wisdom around ransomware payments is frequently stated without the full context. The conventional advice is do not pay. It encourages further attacks. It does not guarantee data recovery. It does not guarantee the deletion of stolen data. All that is true. And yet organizations pay. They pay because the alternative extended operational downtime, permanent data loss, regulatory enforcement, reputational damage can be assessed as more expensive than the payment itself. The decision to pay is not irrational. It is a risk calculation made under extreme time pressure with incomplete information by people who did not anticipate being in that position. What Canvas illustrates is not that paying is wrong. What it illustrates is that the cost of investing in prevention is orders of magnitude lower than the cost of making that decision under duress. Let me repeat, what Canvas illustrates is not that payment is wrong. What it illustrates is that the cost of investing in prevention is orders of magnitude lower than the cost of making that decision under duress. $275 million records. The reputational and regulatory consequences of that disclosure will extend for years. No ransom payment resolves that. The action for medium enterprise leaders is to ensure that your incident response plan addresses the payment decision explicitly. Before an incident occurs, not during one. The plan should define who makes the decision, what criteria govern it, and what the legal and regulatory requirements are in your jurisdiction. Making that decision could, in the middle of an active attack, produce worse outcomes than making it with prior deliberation. Let's go to story 5, and then we wind up the issue, and then we go to the following, the current weekend that has passed. Praise on AI. Praise on AI. Authentication off by default, exploited in 4 hours. Praise on AI is an artificial intelligence agent framework used by development teams building automated AI workflows. A security researcher disclosed that its web interface ships with authentication disabled by default. Any user who deploys Praise on AI without explicitly enabling authentication exposes the entire agent framework to the public internet without any access controls. Exploitation was confirmed within 4 hours of the disclosure being made public. I want to place this in context for medium enterprises. Leaders who may not be directly using Praise on AI, but whose development teams may be evaluating or deploying AI agent tools from the same category. The pattern here is structural, not specific to Praise on AI. Agent frameworks are being built and released at speed. The development teams producing these tools are optimizing for functionality and ease of adoption. Security defaults are frequently an afterthought, and organizations adapting these tools are frequently not asking the right questions before deployment. The question your organization needs to ask before deploying any AI agent tool, any AI workflow automation tool, or any AI connected service is this: what is the default authentication configuration, and who can reach this interface from the internet? If the answer to the second part of that question is anything other than nobody, your deployment is not ready. So we go to story 6, Node IPM NPM supply chain, 3 malicious versions of obfuscated Stela. 3 malicious versions of a package in the NPM software registry were discovered and removed during that week. The package was designed to steal credentials from developer environments through obfuscated code deliberately written to be difficult to read and analyze so that it survives the kind of superficial inspection that most development teams apply to third-party packages. The NPM registry is the primary source of open source packages for JavaScript and Node.js development. If your organization has a development team, internal or outsourced, that builds or maintains software using JavaScript, your build pipeline has access to NPM. And if your build pipeline has access to NPM, a malicious package in that registry is a potential entry point into your development of an environment and everything connected to it. The supplier chain attack pattern has now appeared in multiple package registries across multiple languages within recent months. PyPI, NPM, the Python ecosystem, the JavaScript ecosystem, the Team PCP campaign, which I will return to in the second part of this recording, has been the dominant actor behind many of these incidents. The action for any organization with a software development function is to review whether your build pipeline has controls for third-party package verification and whether your development team has a process for reviewing new package additions against non-threat intelligence. Story 7. Tula Kazua. Russian intelligence evolves its persistent backdoor. Threat intelligence published during that week confirmed that Tula, the Russian Federal Security Agency threat actor group, had evolved its long-standing Kazua backdoor into a modular peer-to-peer botnet architecture. Tula, Turla, Tula, has been one of the most sophisticated and persistent state-sponsored threat actors in the world for more than 2 decades. Kazua, K-A-Z-U-A-R, has been its primary implant. The tool, it plans on compromised systems to maintain persistent access for a significant portion of that time. The transition to a modular peer-to-peer architecture is significant for 2 reasons. First, it makes the command and control infrastructure significantly harder to detect and disrupt. In a peer-to-peer botnet, there is no central server to identify and block. Compromised systems communicate with each other. Taking down one node does not disrupt the network. Second, the modular architecture means the capability can be updated and expanded without recompromising the target. Additional modules can be pushed to existing implants to add new functionality, expanded data collection, lateral movement, additional persistent mechanisms without the risk associated with a fresh compromise attempt. For medium enterprise leaders, the direct implication is not that you're a primary target of Russian intelligence. The implication is that the techniques developed for state-sponsored operations migrate downward into criminal ecosystems. The peer-to-peer botnet architecture that makes Kazua resilient today will appear in financially motivated ransomware toolkits within months. Story 8. Microsoft Patch Tuesday and AI-assisted vulnerability discovery. Microsoft's May Patch Tuesday addressed near record volumes of vulnerabilities. 16 of these vulnerabilities were discovered using Microsoft's AI-assisted vulnerability research methodology designed M-. I want to address the significance of this, not from a patch management perspective. Your IT team should be applying Patch Tuesday updates as a matter of routine, but from a strategic perspective. Microsoft is now using artificial intelligence to discover vulnerabilities in its own software at a rate that human researchers alone could not sustain. The near record volume of vulnerabilities addressed in a single Patch Tuesday is partly a consequence of that accelerated discovery capability. What this means for every organization is that the rate at which patches are published is increasing, and the rate at which attackers reverse engineer those patches to develop exploits is not decreasing. The window between patch availability and active exploitation, which was measured in weeks 5 years ago and in days 2 years ago, is now measured in hours for the most critical vulnerabilities. This is not an argument against patching, it is an argument for treating patch application as an operational rhythm rather than a periodic event. Organizations that patch monthly are operating on a cadence that no longer matches the threat environment. So that covers the intelligence picture from the weekend of the 16th and 17th of May. Before I move to the second weekend, I want to name the thread that connects everything I have just described. The Cisco vulnerability was known, the Exchange vulnerability was known, the Precision AI authentication gap was disclosed publicly, the NPM supply chain attack targeted a registry that every development team using JavaScript accesses. West Pharmaceutical was hit with a wiping attack, not an encryption attack, which suggests the attacker had sufficient access to choose the more destructive option deliberately. None of these incidents required novel tradecraft. All of them exploited known conditions in predictable environments. Now let us move to the second weekend. Part 2, the weekend of May 24th to 25th, 2026. I've done this lengthily because I'm covering two weekends, and this is a very vital and important information. I don't think I'll do 2 weekends again in a long time. I'll be up to date with just covering a weekend's intelligence. But I wanted to bring this back to you because the significance of this is, as you follow, you will know how important it is. The week ending the 23rd of May 2026 produced 4 stories that collectively illustrate a single uncomfortable reality. The organizations best positioned to defend against the current threat landscape are the ones that treat security as a governance function, not a technology function. The largest story of the week involved a breach at one of the most widely deployed developer tools in the world. The most geopolitically significant story involved critical infrastructure in the United States being manipulated through a vulnerability that required no technical sophistication whatsoever to exploit. The most instructive story for medium enterprise decision makers involved a 300-employee entertainment venue that demonstrates precisely why organizations of that size are selected targets, not accidental ones. Story 1, Grafana Labs, the Team PCP campaign reaches developer tooling. The lead story of the second week, of the second weekend, not the second week, the second weekend, was the confirmation that Grafana Labs had suffered a significant breach of its internal GitHub repositories. Grafana is the open source data visualization and monitoring platform used by technology teams worldwide to observe the health and performance of their infrastructure. If your organization uses cloud services, if your development team monitors application performance, if your operations team watches infrastructure metrics, there's a high probability that Grafana is involved somewhere in that picture, either directly or through the tools of a vendor you depend on. The threat actor group behind the attack is identified as Coinbase Cartel, operating within the broader Team PCP supply chain campaign. The breach resulted in the exfiltration of Grafana's entire private code base from its internal GitHub repositories. I want to be precise about what was taken and why it matters. Private source code is not just intellectual property, it is a map. It shows internal systems architecture, authentication flows, API integrations, and the specific implementation details that an attacker needs to move from a general capability to a targeted exploit against a specific organization's deployment. A threat actor holding Grafana's private source code now has a map of the internal architecture of tools deployed across thousands of organizations. Grafana refused to pay the ransom. That is the correct decision. But the refusal does not undo the exfiltration. The source code that was taken does not expire. It does not become useless because no payment was made. It persists for as long as the attacker retains it and the analytical capability to exploit what it reveals. For every organization running a Grafana deployment, self-hosted or cloud-managed, this breach is a signal to review your Grafana configuration, your authentication settings, and your monitoring of access to that platform. The TurnStack Team PCP campaign has now reached GitHub. The TurnStack Team PCP campaign has now touched GitHub infrastructure directly, PyTorch Lightning, the NPM registry, and Grafana's internal repositories. This is not a series of isolated incidents. It is a systematic campaign targeting the tooling that software development teams depend on at every stage of their workflow. Story 2, Iranian actors and US fuel monitoring systems. This is interesting. The geopolitically significant story of the weekend was the confirmation of a campaign attributed to Iranian-linked threat actors targeting automatic tank gauging systems at fuel stations across the United States. I want to explain what ATG systems are before I explain why this matters. Automatic tank gauging systems monitor the fuel levels, temperature, and pressure in underground storage tanks at fuel stations. They are the systems that tell an operator how much fuel is in the ground, whether there is a leak, and whether the tank conditions are within safe operating parameters. These systems are connected to the internet in many deployments, frequently without authentication, because the original design assumption was that nobody would attempt to access a petrol station's fuel monitoring system maliciously. That assumption was wrong. The Iranian-linked actors in this campaign did not need to exploit a complex vulnerability. They searched for ATG systems that were accessible from the public internet with no password protection. And they found them in significant numbers. Once connected, they manipulated the displayed readings. A system showing incorrect fuel levels can trigger unnecessary deliveries, can mask actual leak conditions, and can disrupt the operational picture that fuel station operators rely on. The broader significance of this story sits at the intersection of operational technology, security, and geopolitical context. At the time of this attack, Iranian and United States Israeli military tensions were elevated. The targeting of fuel monitoring infrastructure is consistent with a capability demonstration, a signal that critical civilian infrastructure can be disrupted at scale without sophisticated technical means. For medium enterprise leaders, the lesson is not about ATG systems specifically. It is about the category of internet-connected operational technology that exists in your environment or in the environments of suppliers you depend on, with assumptions about who accesses it that were made before the current threat landscape existed. If you operate any internet-connected device, any sensor, any monitoring system, any building management system, any industrial controller, and that device was configured for connectivity without a contemporary security review, you have the same structural problem that made those fuel stations accessible. Story 3, HDFC asset management, reputational damage before operational damage. HDFC Asset Management Company one of India's largest mutual fund managers, disclosed the cyber attack during this last weekend. On the day of the disclosure, before any confirmed data loss had been established, before the full scope of the breach was known, the company's share price dropped by 3.7%. I want to dwell on the sequence because it contains a lesson that is more important for medium enterprise decision making than the technical details of the breach itself. The share price did not fall because data had been confirmed stolen. It fell because the disclosure had been made. The market's response to the announcement preceded any verified operational consequence. Reputational damage in the financial services context does not wait for forensic confirmation. It responds to disclosure. For every medium enterprise operating in financial services, professional services, or any sector where client trust is a business critical asset, the sequence at HDFC is your sequence if a breach occurs. The client relationship damage, the regulatory attention, the competitor positioning, none of it waits for the final incident report. It begins with the announcement. This is not an argument against transparent disclosure. Transparent disclosure is both a legal obligation in most jurisdictions and the ethically correct approach. It is an argument for investing in prevention so the disclosure never needs to be made. We got story 4. Chain Hasten Dinner Theaters, the medium enterprise as a selected target. Now, Chain Hasten Dinner Theaters, a venue with approximately 300 employees operating dinner theater performances in Minnesota, confirmed a ransomware attack during the weekend. The ransomware note was discovered on the same morning that an norovirus outbreak hit the venue. Performances were cancelled for the following week. I want to address the response that some listeners will have to this story, which is why would attackers target a dinner theater? The answer to that question dismantles a misconception that is genuinely dangerous to medium enterprise security posture. Attackers targeting organizations in the 50 to 300 employee range are not selecting them because of their strategic importance or the value of their specific data. They are selecting them because of their structural predictability. Organizations of this size typically operate with minimal dedicated IT security resource. They typically carry cyber insurance with limits that make a modest ransom economically viable for the attacker. They typically have not tested their incident response procedures before meeting them. They have not tested their incident response procedures before needing them prior. And they are distributed across every sector: entertainment, hospitality, manufacturing, professional services, healthcare, which means the attack surface is enormous. Chain Hausen Dinner Theaters was not an accidental target. It was the profile of a target that a particular category of ransomware operator actively seeks. The compounding of the ransomware attack with the norovirus outbreak is instructive, not because the two events are connected, they are not, but because it illustrates the operational reality of a cyber incident at an organization without dedicated security capability. When you have no IT security team and your operations are simultaneously disrupted by a physical health incident, your capacity to respond to that ransomware is degraded precisely when the time pressure of the attack is at its highest. The action is to ensure that your incident response plan does not assume your full operational capacity will be available when you need it. Regulatory and Intelligence, UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill. The UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill reached report stage during the week, with the summer 2026 public consultations scheduled. The UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill represents the most significant update to UK cybersecurity legislation since the Network and Information Systems Regulations of 2018. For medium enterprises operating in the United Kingdom, particularly in those in sectors designated as critical national infrastructure, which includes financial services, healthcare, and elements of professional services. The bill will introduce new mandatory incident reporting requirements, new resilience standards, and expanded regulatory enforcement powers. The summer 2026 consultation is the last meaningful opportunity for medium enterprises to engage with the legislative process before the bill passes. If you have not yet reviewed the bill's provisions and assessed the implications for your organization's obligations, this is the time to do so. Alongside the bill, the UK government cybersecurity breaches survey published findings during the week that are directly relevant to medium enterprise leaders adapting artificial intelligence tools. The survey found that only 24% of organizations that have adopted AI tools have implemented security processes specifically governing those tools. 3 in 4 organizations adopting AI tools are doing so without any security governance framework for that adoption. No guardrails. This is not a criticism of AI adoption. AI tools offer genuine capability, advantages for medium enterprises across every function. It is a statement about the gap between adoption velocity and governance velocity. Organizations are adapting AI tools at a pace that their security processes are not keeping up with. The action is to audit every AI tool, every AI application, every AI-assisted workflow, every large language model integration that your organization currently uses. For each tool, confirm who has access, what data it can reach, what authentication protects it, and whether there is a process for reviewing its continued use as the tool evolves. That audit is not a technology project, it is a governance project. It takes a spreadsheet and an afternoon, not a software deployment. So to close this all, the through lane across both weekends. I said at the opening of this recording that the 2 weekends tell a single connected story. Let me now name what that story is. Across both fortnights, across every incident I have described, the organizations that were compromised shared one characteristic. They had not closed known gaps before attackers arrived. Cisco SD1 had a patch. Exchange Server had a patch. Praise on AI's authentication gap was a configuration choice, not a technical limitation. The ATG systems in the United States were internet accessible without authentication by design choice. Not by necessity, Grafana's repositories were targeted through the same Team PCP supply chain campaign that has been active and documented for months. None of these organizations were surprised by novel unprecedented tradecraft. They were caught by the predictable consequences of known unaddressed conditions. The actions I have described throughout this recording can be summarized in 4 questions that every medium enterprise leader should be able to answer this as of last weekend, but every other weekend. First, are all critical infrastructure patches applied and verified, not scheduled? Verified. Second, are your backups genuinely isolated from your primary environment, not merely stored separately? Third, have you inventoried every AI tool, every internet-connected device, and every third-party integration currently in use in your organization? Fourth, Does your incident response plan address the payment decision, the communication decision, and the regulatory notification decision before an incident, not during one? If you cannot answer yes to all four, work ahead of you this week is clear. The work ahead is very clear for you this week or the remainder of this week or the beginning of next week. It aliter continua. The full written editions of both weekend intelligence briefs are available on LinkedIn. Search for Frederick Cybersecurity or follow the links in the apps. You can go to at Frederick Wakuliaka 4561 and look at the videos. The AI Breach Report publishes every Wednesday and Friday on LinkedIn with deeper analysis of the threat actor activity, the specific vulnerabilities, and the defensive actions described in these weekend editions. I'm Frederick Wakuliaka. Stay informed and stay protected.